War doesn't always turn on a missile or a headline strike. It can turn on a single box-shaped machine that never blinks. Ukraine's Bradley M2 just walked into the ugliest gray zones in Donetsk and along the Kursk axis and changed the rhythm of the fight without asking for permission. It stops the rush, drops troops on the line, and pours fire until the field goes quiet. Then it does it again. Russian defenses felt the shift first. ATGM teams moved, FPV lanes bent, and trenches that looked safe yesterday suddenly felt too shallow today. This isn't hype. It's a new tempo where infantry moves faster, sensors talk cleaner, and one armored workhorse forces an army to rewrite its map in real time. Stay with this report to see how the Bradley is bending the line, where the pressure goes next, and why small changes at the front can flip the cost of the whole war. If you want sharp maps, straight numbers, and field-level breakdowns, hit subscribe and share. This is Military Force. In the gray belts of Donetsk and along the Kursk axis, the Bradley works like a tempo lever that flips pressure at the point of contact because it blocks the rush, drops troops clean, and smothers fire before the enemy can reset. Crews use the 25mm chain gun to cut firing slits, the cokes to rake trench lips, and the tow to break the hard knots, while smoke grenades and hot exhaust blur thermal sights and open a short door in the line. This stop, deliver, suppress cycle turns a stalled strip of mud into a moving lane, since one vehicle can freeze a spearhead long enough for infantry to grab ground and hold it. When that cycle repeats on schedule, the front stops reacting to the enemy's clock and starts moving to the Bradley's rhythm, which is where the fight begins to bend. That sets up the angles and terrain piece that decides who fires first under stress. The Bradley thrives when it can work hull down behind berms, since its optics read heat, shape, and motion through haze. And that picture lets gunners catch anti-tank guided missile teams as they slide into side arcs. Short controlled bursts stitch along walls and tree lines to blind spotters, while high explosive rounds crack rangefinders and force crews to duck, and a tow from a cold hide punishes any bunker that tries to anchor the lane. Thermal smoke then seals the exit for a few breaths, because the goal is not to stay and trade, but to claw a window, pass the squad, and vanish before return fire arrives. Once the angles are safe, the troop delivery becomes the core task that keeps the advance honest. Squads step off the ramp under cover, not in the open, and they move in pairs toward firing pits as the gun tracks likely arcs and the driver holds a steady nose to mask movement. Medics sit close to the ramp, spare ammo stacks behind the bench, and the team leader rides near the intercom, so the handoff from steel to boots happens in seconds, not in minutes. Casualties fall when rides end at the right micro-terrain and when the vehicle keeps the enemy's head down for the first sprint, which is why discipline on drop points matters more than any single gadget. That handoff only works if the other side cannot set the pace, so Bradley forces Russian units to change how they try to kill it. ATGM crews shift to oblique shots from hedgerows instead of straight lanes. FPV pilots hunt roofs and rear corners, and trench crews add deeper bays and longer zigzags to blunt 25mm rakes. Electronic warfare teams push closer to the ground to cut drone scouts, while decoy silhouettes and fake heat traps appear near true gun pits to soak the first burst. Yet the vehicle answers with speed and sequencing, because shoot and scoot takes it off the aim line. Tau top attack punishes fixed nests, and coordinated smoke denies FPV eyes right when dismounts begin to move. None of that holds if sustainment fails, which is why the Bradley's field routine is as important as its gun drills. Crews plan reload points inside dead ground, fuel at pre-marked pockets, and call a recovery track early rather than wait, since a stuck hull is a beacon for every camera in range. Commanders schedule short on-station cycles, rotate vehicles to keep barrels and engines cool, and push quick checks on tracks and idlers, because small breaks prevent long stalls that bleed tempo. When those routines hold, the vehicle enters, fixes a problem, and exits before counter-battery or drone swarms can mass, which keeps pressure steady and affordable across the day. That is how a single armored workhorse shifts a contested strip into a manageable lane, setting the stage for the sensor-to-fire chain and the broader campaign math that will be mapped in the next section. This tactic starts with a simple move. An M1117 rolls forward to pull eyes and missiles while the real assault forms on the flanks. The armored car keeps a steady pace, throws smoke, and shows a clear thermal shape so hostile teams think they have a clean shot. Gunners inside the M1117 fire short. Sharp bursts to mark likely launch pits, and cameras watch for muzzle flash or wire trails. The aim is not to win a duel, but to make defenders reveal where they sit, which lets the assault commander draw a quick firing map. With that picture in hand, the assault can split cleanly into two lanes. The second move uses split delivery, a Bradley on one axis and an M113 on the other, both timed to arrive inside the same short window. The Bradley covers the hot side with 25mm fire and TOW standoff shots, while the M113 brings a full squad to a safer lip of ground. Drivers hold offset lines to avoid the same kill box, and each vehicle keeps a separate smoke plan to block thermal sightlines. The two-lane approach removes crowding near a single breach and stops blast overlap, which protects troops and keeps momentum steady. Once the drop points are set, the infantry can step off under a shield that feels real, not theoretical. Fire support makes the split work, because direct and indirect lines combine to cut enemy reaction time. The Bradley suppresses trench mouths and bunker doors, and mortars land quick pairs on suspected missile hides and relay teams. Forward observers use small drones to watch dust plumes and heat spikes, then pass fast grids by voice to avoid jamming delays. Crews aim for tight rhythm, 30 to 60 seconds of heavy cover fire, 10 seconds of dismount, and 20 seconds to clear the lip. When that clock holds, defenders struggle to switch targets, which opens the gap the assault needs to enter the first trench. Control of angles decides survival, so the assault shapes sightlines before it moves across open ground. The M117 stops behind a hard corner to bait a second shot. The Bradley slides to a hull-down notch, and the M113 parks in dead ground. Sappers drop a small smoke pot to hide the last 5 meters, and the squad leaders count bodies into the trench to keep spacing clean. Range discipline matters. Short bursts at 10 to 15 rounds, single TOW on hardened nodes, and quick ceasefire once grips are secure. With angles locked and spacing right, the foothold turns from fragile to usable in under 2 minutes. Stabilization is the last step, because gains only matter if they hold under pushback. Teams set claymores on likely approach lanes, pass a short ammo resupply from the M113, and call a 2-tube mortar screen to mute counterattacks. A handheld jammer covers low-flying FPV drones near the trench rim, while a spare launcher watches for late ATGM crews trying side shots. Command then rotates the M1117 to a rear watch, keeps the Bradley on a short tether for emergency fire, and marks a casualty route. With the trench tied into a simple defense, the line is ready for the next bound toward deeper ground. The second axis wins space by keeping the Bradley's gun talking while it enters the landing zone, because steady suppression closes enemy eyes and gives the squad a narrow but real window. Short bursts rake trench rims, while airburst rounds shock lookout pits, and a tight smoke screen cuts thermal contrast for 20 to 40 seconds. Drivers hold a shallow angle to reduce profile, and commanders count down the final meters over intercom. With the lane masked and the clock running, the infantry can move under a shield that feels solid. Assault teams seize the first foothold with simple tools used at the right time, since a smoke grenade and a small charge often decide the first doorway. One soldier pops smoke to blind periscope slots, while a second places a shaped pack on the bunker lip, and a third covers the side trench with a carbine. The fire team crosses 5 to 8 meters in a single rush, then hugs the wall to avoid grazing fire. Once the blast breaks the door, the point man checks heat with a quick glance, which sets the tempo for the entry. Room clearing in trench segments is short and strict, because speed beats volume when corners are tight and visibility is poor. Grenades go first, optics scans second, and controlled pairs finish the job, while the rear guard watches the last bend for any late push. Teams log each bay with a chalk mark and pass head count by hand signal, so radio silence holds against jamming. A typical 2-bay segment falls in 90 seconds if spacing stays clean, which keeps the momentum needed for the deeper bunker. Dugout neutralization follows a common pattern that trades distance for certainty, as the Bradley keeps mouths pinned while sappers work. Gunners stitch the access slit with 10 to 15 round bursts, then pause to avoid splash on friendlies, and the squad emplaces a directional charge on the main step. If the door holds, a second charge aims low to shear hinges, and a shotgun breach clears debris before entry. Overwatch drones hover at 20 to 30 meters to spot movement and heat plumes, which helps the team avoid a blind corner inside the tunnel. Defenders try to break the push with sudden flanks and last-minute traps, yet constant pressure cuts the time they need to set those moves. Tripwire lanes slow, but a probe stick and a quick rake clear a safe crawl space, while a rear element watches for grenades tossed from cross trenches. Reserve groups often counter within 3 minutes, so the Bradley shifts fire to likely approach routes and clips the edge with cokes to spoil the timing. When that response arrives late or disorganized, the foothold stabilizes fast, which keeps the assault on schedule. Holding the gain matters as much as taking it, so the squad resets the space for defense while the vehicle prepares to redeploy. Claymores cover 2 feeders, spare magazines move forward in soft bags, and a casualty path is marked with chem lights for a clean pull. The Bradley swaps to a nearby hull-down notch, checks ammo, and confirms a new smoke plan, while a runner updates the map for the next bound. With the bunker cleared and the trench tied into a short defense, the force is ready to link this local win to the wider sensor-to-fire chain that drives the operation forward. The Bradley wins the first seconds by cutting enemy sight with thermal smoke, because Cornet and Metis crews need a clean view to guide a shot. Crews pop a stacked screen that blooms in 2 waves and hangs for roughly 18 to 25 seconds, while the driver holds a shallow angle to shrink the side profile. Commanders count down over intercom, and gunners watch for faint sparks or wire glint that often betrays a launcher under stress. The aim is to blind the narrow corridor where missiles travel, so the vehicle can act before the tree line becomes a kill box, and that is why the smoke comes before everything else. Once the view is broken, the Bradley fires 2 tow missiles in tight sequence, because a paired strike deletes both the gun pit and the cover man behind it. The first missile targets the hottest node, usually a hardened slit or a sandbag crown, while the second slews to a backup hide that tends to carry the spotter. Flight time at these ranges runs a few seconds, yet the impact stretches the window by shocking crews who rely on exposed optics. The point is to remove the anchor of the defense, which then lets the assault choose the path instead of inheriting one, and that choice sets up the move to the woods. The gun then shifts to short, precise bursts, since 8 to 12 rounds will rake branches without wasting ammo or overheating the barrel. Air burst, or HET rounds, snap limbs and cut camouflage nets, while the coke stitches low to rip tripwire poles near the route line. A quick ceasefire follows to avoid splash on friendlies, and the commander checks drone feeds for fresh heat leaks along the edge. This measured fire cleans the entry lane without announcing a fixed rhythm, and that lack of pattern keeps ambushers guessing as the vehicle closes in. Approach speed stays moderate because smooth motion under cover is safer than a loud sprint across broken soil. Drivers read ruts and shallow ditches to prevent a sudden nose dip that would widen the silhouette at the worst moment. sappers throw a small smoke pot the final 10 meters, and the ramp drops where micro-terrain gives instant cover to the team. Timing matters more than noise here, so the handoff to infantry happens under a thin veil that still blocks thermal eyes, and that veil carries the squad into the trees. Inside the tree line, control of angles beats raw firepower, as short lines of sight and tight corners favor the side that turns first. Team leaders push a wedge through the first row, mark safe trunks with tape, and place a directional charge on any slit that faces the path. Overwatch drones hover at 20 meters to catch side movement, while a handheld jammer dulls low FPV threats near the canopy. This layered entry trades distance for certainty, because calm steps under cover save lives when branches hide both sensors and steel. Russian crews try to reset with flank shots and shoulder launchers placed deeper in the grove, yet the Bradley denies that reset by sequencing tools. Thermal smoke refreshes as the squad crosses a gap. The gun taps likely alcoves with short bursts, and another Tau waits cold for a hard point that refuses to fold. If a shot comes from a fresh angle, the driver pivots into a small berm and breaks line of sight before the second missile can correct. Every piece buys seconds that add up to control, and control is what opens the way from the tree line to the trench. Stabilization closes the loop, because gains vanish without a quick anchor inside the woods. Claymores face the probable return route, ammo shifts forward from the pack mule ruck, and a casualty lane is flagged with chem lights. The Bradley pulls to a hull-down notch, checks remaining smoke, and confirms the next firing lane with the drone team. With the edge held and the path marked, the force can link tree line control to broader fires and keep the campaign clock tilted in its favor. The Bradley holds ground in woods by running the 25mm Bushmaster at a steady rhythm, because fast bursts grind down cover and keep heads low. Crews use about 10 rounds per second depending on mode, and they stitch trench lips, tree stumps, and firing slits until movement stops. A controlled cycle can keep suppression for roughly 15 minutes, which is long enough to cut wire, break obstacles, and force a pullback. That timed pressure opens a safe window for teams to move, which sets up the next piece of the fight. Survivability matters once missiles enter the lane, so armor kits and drills protect crews when Cornet or Metis appear. Field notes describe explosive reactive tiles fitted around the nose and turret, and they can blunt the first hit while smoke hides the exit. There are accounts of vehicles taking 2 strikes with crews walking off, though the exact variant and add-on pack still need confirmation. This mix of extra armor and fast concealment keeps the vehicle in play, which keeps the line from folding under sudden ATGM fire. The same gun that clears brush also reaches out to punish thin armor, since fuel and morale both burn when an APC ignites. Gunners have recorded kills near 2 kilometers by hitting side tanks on BTR-class targets, and a short fireball often forces a swerve or a stop. Spacing stays tight, bursts stay short, and a quick ceasefire follows to avoid waste and barrel heat while optics scan for new shapes. Cutting one carrier from a column breaks lift capacity at once, which slows any counter-push aimed at the fresh foothold. Pressure means casualties, so the Bradley shifts rolls fast and handles Casevac when infantry gets pinned by shell bursts. Drivers back into dead ground, medics load through the ramp, and the vehicle pushes to a marked aid point under its own smoke. Command tracks ammo, engine temps, and route risk, then returns the hull to the line once the handoff is clean. That close loop of fire, endurance, reach, and rescue keeps tempo on Ukraine's side, which prepares the ground for the broader sensor-to-fire chain that follows. The Bradley M2 is shaping the front line because it moves troops safely, holds pressure at close range, opens hardpoints with TOW, and exits on time, so tempo shifts before maps do. This effect is visible in shorter exposure windows, cleaner handoffs, and faster trench retention, which together change how Russian teams plan shots and build cover. To keep the picture honest, Field reporting must confirm armor kits, clarify M242 burst profiles by mode, and log verified outcomes against ATGM and low-tier FPV. Those numbers will anchor the cost math that decides where Ukraine spends fuel, crews, and smoke, and that is where the next indicators will speak. Watch 3 signals to judge momentum: denser low-altitude FPV routes, fresh ATGM angles along tree lines, and a thicker SHORAD screen pushed forward. If these patterns harden, Ukraine must refine timing and resupply cycles. If they soften, the window for deeper gains widens without buying new risk. Either way, the lesson is simple: control the seconds, and the day follows, because discipline at the ramp and calm fire at the edge still write outcomes. For sharp maps, plain numbers, and field-level breakdowns without noise, subscribe, share, and stay with Military Force.